I think about and talk about healing as freedom. My one-on-one program is called Journey to Freedom for a reason. But it can be hard to know what that really means, especially when you've never really felt any sense of real freedom in your life. And today I want to talk a little bit about that and how we can work toward getting there. Welcome. I'm Peggy Oliveira. Thank you for joining me. It really is kind of interesting and unfortunate, I think, in a lot of ways, that until we've been able to really experience it, that we don't really have a solid sense of what freedom really means, what we're really striving for along this journey. And there's a lot that can go into that. And today I want to focus on sharing something with you that might be just one of the many different types of practices or tools that maybe you can use to help you feel or connect with, practice a little bit of that freedom. So I want to talk first about kind of this idea, and then I'm going to share a few prompts with you that I'd really encourage you, maybe even pause right now and go grab something to write with, because I would encourage you to write if you can, maybe even in a journal, but maybe you just give yourself a little bit of space to consider these things, and then try to make sure you write them down or save this video so that these are things you can come back to over time. So this whole video really came about because in last week's card reading, it talked about flow and creation, and at least that's what I took from it, because I'm at a time right now where I am kind of exploring internally and creating externally. And I'm not quite sure exactly what that is or what that's ultimately going to look like or anything, but it really kind of resonated for me. And as I sat with it a little bit longer, I thought about how, just again, going back to that idea of feeling constrained. And I have never, and I've maybe shared this a little bit, but I won't say never at this point in my life, but earlier in my life, and I would say, gosh, maybe even up till, I don't know, maybe 5 years or so ago, I really truly believed that I was not creative. I liked the idea of being creative, kind of like I like the idea of being a runner, but a runner I am not. And will never be, could really never be, because that's just not how my body works, functions at its prime anyway. But the idea of creativity felt as foreign as the idea of being a runner, because anytime that I would think about some sort of creative thing, and I'm not just talking about actually creating like a piece of art or a new recipe or anything like that. I'm not talking about actually having to create something that you can see and hold that is tangible. I'm talking about even just kind of letting my mind explore. It's not something that I ever really allowed space for, because it just seemed impossible. It seemed like kind of a waste of time, honestly. And so whenever the idea of, like, even trying to think about growing a business or something like that, a lot of the things that you read talk about getting into the creative space and that sort of thing. And like, it just felt very foreign to me. And over these last years, I've really recognized that creativity certainly can be about something that is created and finished and is tangible. That certainly can be the case. But creativity can be so much more than that, bigger, broader than that. And I think one of the challenges along this journey is that we tend to, I think as humans, but certainly as survivors who just have a particular way, often as a form of survival and coping, of thinking pretty linear like, and kind of have rules and stuff like that, which was certainly the case for me, and I know it is for a lot of other people. But with creativity, when we create space to allow ourselves to explore internally in the world, we are able to connect to flow. And I have, like, when I think about like a word of the year or something, flow is always something that comes to mind, because in that feeling constrained, there's like no movement, there's no fluidity, there's no expression, there's no exploration beyond that constraint. And even if you are a creative person that creates things, there's probably some aspects of your life in which you do feel constrained, whether it's about healing, whether it's about exploring relationships or vulnerability or the possibility in front of you. And flow, in terms of how I tend to think of it, is part of that freedom. It's the ability to create space, to create opportunity within us, to allow ideas and emotions and possibility to come up to the surface, to expand. And the freedom is allowing ourselves to really explore that, both internally in terms of letting our mind wander and wonder, and putting that into action in some way. It doesn't have to be action that other people see or any specific type of action that's going to come to some sort of tangible thing. It can be about just letting yourself write whatever you're feeling at the moment. It could be about letting yourself open to trying something a little different, a new type of food or a new activity or a new relationship. Being able to do those things from a place of ease is what freedom is. For me, in my mind, when I think about healing, it doesn't mean that there isn't some uncertainty or anxiety. It doesn't mean that it's going to turn out the way that you hope. It doesn't mean that it's going to look a particular way, because we can't really control really any of that. But when you are coming at it from a place of that flow and that freedom, it's not about the outcome. It's about the experience. It's about vulnerability and growth and pushing those boundaries within yourself. And so much of healing is actually part of that. We may not feel that sense of ease, so it's not about that necessarily. But a lot of healing is about pushing the boundaries that we have set for ourselves in terms of what we can or cannot do, what is or is not possible for us. So I'd like you to just encourage you to maybe take a moment, maybe pause, and just notice what's feeling present for you. Whether it's thoughts or sensations, ideas. Maybe you recognize that there's been something that you've maybe wanted or considered or tried but backed off because you felt like it was a waste of time or resources or something like that. What do you notice being present right now? And if you haven't yet, maybe grab that piece of paper and a pen or your journal, because I'm going to share the prompts with you now. And you don't have to journal about it. You can just sit with it and think about it. But this is something that if you come back to it again, whether it is tomorrow or a week from now or 6 months from now, particularly if you kind of stay mindful of these ideas, you'll likely notice that some different things end up coming up for you. Not right or wrong, just you might notice some different things, and that can be really helpful. And that's true for really any sort of journal prompt and practice. So I actually wrote these down so that I don't forget. But again, pause if you need to grab a piece of paper. And I'd really encourage you to maybe pause after each prompt that I give you and just let yourself, take in the prompt and just notice what feels present. Or if you really feel like you want to, like something immediately comes to mind and you want to get it down, then absolutely do that. No right or wrong way here. Nobody's going to know what you're doing or not doing. Just give yourself the space, both energetically and in terms of your time, to consider, to open, to allow. So, what does freedom feel like in your body? Now, I know that you may not feel like you have any idea, because maybe you've never felt like you have ever experienced freedom, particularly in your body. And that's okay. You don't need to have experienced it. This is about opening. This is about letting your mind wander, pushing through those constraints. So imagining if you were to feel a true sense of freedom, what would that feel like in your body? And if you don't have the words, that's okay. Can you draw it? Does it have a color? Does it have any sort of shape or movement? However you can imagine that, that's perfectly okay. It's about allowing yourself to consider opening to what freedom could or would or might feel like in your body. So again, maybe pause and consider it. And if you're really coming up completely blank, just start writing that. Like nothing is coming to mind. I have no idea. I think this is actually kind of stupid. Like literally just start writing whatever is present for you. And then just keep sitting with it. Keep writing and keep sitting with it. And maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow if you try it, but maybe a week from now, you're able to open up a little bit more. So, what does, would, could, might, possibly freedom feel like in your body? Prompt number 2. What if there was no right or wrong way to experience this moment? I'm going to read that again. What if there was no right or wrong way to experience this moment? Again, just notice what immediately comes up for you. This, I think, can be important because we do often have expectations. We have very clear, kind of black and white ideas of something being right or wrong or good or bad, right? And no matter what moment, so again, right now, tomorrow, next week, 6 months from now, thinking about, what if there was no right or wrong way to experience this moment? So maybe you are about to get on a vulnerable or important phone call. What if there is no right or wrong way to experience that moment? What if you allowed yourself to just start writing with no constraints? What if there was no right or wrong way to experience that moment? What if you wanted to draw and there was no right or wrong way to draw? Again, just letting yourself explore that. And if you have difficulty finding words for that, or maybe you just prefer to do it in a different way, really maybe getting into that creativity a little bit. What would the energy be? What would the energy look like? What color might it be? Maybe there's an object or some sort of image that comes to mind. You could draw or write that. And if you come back to this exercise again, maybe even consider if that resonates a little bit more than the idea of actually just writing, maybe get some crayons or markers or something like that and let yourself really explore. Prompt number 3. What would you do if you followed your curiosity instead of your list of expectations? And just sit with that for a moment. I'm going to read it again. What would you do if you followed your curiosity instead of your list of expectations? Or maybe your to-do list? Again, maybe pause and just notice what comes up for you. I know for so many people, whether it's in asking a question, and I have experienced that where people have had so many questions that they've wanted to ask but have held back. And that comes from a place of curiosity. And curiosity, no matter what it is about, whether it's a question about something specific or, again, your mind just kind of wandering and wondering about things that maybe seem so far removed or so abstract, or maybe something really concrete in how the universe works, which to me feels a little abstract, but whatever it is, we wonder a lot, right? We wonder about experiences. We wonder about people and places and things. But we often hold back for a number of reasons. Expectations being one, fear being another. So maybe that's even something to add to it, which I didn't think of before. But what would you do if you followed your curiosity instead of your fear? I actually really like that. And I might need to sit with that one a little bit too. But allowing yourself to feel that openness, that possibility, that flow, right? Because the thing that you wonder about, the thing that you're curious about, there's a reason. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking, but there's a reason that that is coming up for you. And so often we shut it down. And some of that can be learned because as children, we naturally have a lot of curiosity. We're learning, right? We're literally trying to develop our sense of self and the world and all of that. So there is a lot of curiosity as children. And there are a lot of things in life that people don't have answers to. And I know as a mom, I struggled with this too, that when we don't have an answer or the questions are never ending, it can feel kind of frustrating at times, or just kind of like it's enough already. And so parents, teachers can sometimes shut that curiosity down. But when you have also experienced trauma as a young person, there's no, curiosity is unsafe. And so while those thoughts, those curiosities will still come to mind, we shut them down often very quickly out of fear, out of shame, out of feeling that it doesn't really matter because we don't matter. So again, maybe there's no specific ideas or words that come to mind, but what does that curiosity look like? Does it have a color? Can you describe the energy? What does it feel like in your body? Healing ultimately is about flow that comes from ease, that comes from a groundedness in trusting that wherever that flow takes you, you are safe, you are enough, and it will be okay. And you deserve that. And part of how we teach our nervous system that it is safe to allow that flow is, in part, there's a lot of things that go into it, including so many of the things that I've already talked about over the years. But these questions, these prompts that you can allow yourself to explore, can help you connect with that. And remembering that wonder and creativity and expression doesn't have to have like this final ultimate purpose, this tangible, productive outcome. Particularly when it comes to healing, it's much more about the internal exploration and ease and flow. I would love to hear from you what you thought about this. This video overall was a little bit different than normal. So I'd love to hear from you. What'd you think of the prompts? Did you do them? Are you saving them to do them later? What came up for you? I'd love for you, if it feels comfortable to you, I would love for you to share what did come up for you. Were you able to write? Was it more about an idea or an image, a color, a shape? Share in the comments. Let's connect there. Thanks so much for being here. I'll look forward to seeing you next time.